The year 2247 brought humanity's first contact with alien life, and it came in the worst possible way. At the edge of human space, near the frontier colony of New Hebrides, reality itself seemed to tear open. One by one, massive organic ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They kept coming. Hundreds. Thousands. Hundreds of thousands. The sensors couldn't keep up with the count. Captain James Miller had been drinking coffee on the bridge of his frigate, the Indomitable, when the alarm started screaming. He was a man in his early 40s with grey already streaking his temples. 20 years in the United Navy had taught him to stay calm when everyone else panicked. But when he saw the tactical display, even he felt his stomach drop. 1 million ships. The number kept flashing on his screen. 1 million. His crew stood frozen, staring at the impossible sight. Lieutenant Emma Foster, his tactical officer, was the first to speak. Her voice cracked slightly. "Sir, those readings can't be right. That's more ships than humanity has ever built in our entire history." Miller watched the alien fleet arrange itself into perfect geometric formations. They moved like a single organism, precise and deliberate. Beautiful, in a terrifying way. "The readings are right, Lieutenant. We're looking at something that makes our entire military look like a joke." The communication station beeped. Someone was hailing them. Miller nodded to the officer. "Put it through." The hologram that materialized in the center of the bridge made several crew members gasp. The creature stood nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms extending from a torso covered in crystalline exoskeleton that caught the light like a prism. Its face was angular and alien, but its eyes held an intelligence that was unmistakably calculating. "I am General Thastar of the Velkorn Dominion," the alien announced. Its voice came through the translators as deep and resonant, carrying absolute authority. "We have observed your species. You are primitive. Weak. Divided among yourselves. You will surrender your colonies and your worlds to Velkorn rule." Miller glanced at his crew. They were looking to him for guidance, for hope, for anything. He looked back at the alien general and kept his expression neutral. Thastar continued, and there was something like pride in his voice. "We have conquered 4 to 7 intelligent species across this galaxy. You will be the 48th. This is not negotiable. This is simply how things are." The general gestured with one of his 4 arms toward the viewscreen. "I have 1 million soldiers at my command. You have 1 small vessel. Surrender now, and your deaths will be painless. Resist, and we will make examples of your worlds." The bridge was silent. Miller could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. He looked at the tactical display again. 1 million ships. His frigate carried a crew of just 23 people. They had 6 railgun batteries and a handful of missiles. By every logical measure, this was hopeless. But something about the alien speech bothered him. The certainty. The assumption. The way Thastar spoke about conquest like it was inevitable, like some law of nature. Miller had studied military history his entire career. He knew what happened when one side assumed victory was guaranteed. He also knew something the aliens clearly didn't. Humanity had been fighting wars for 10,000 years. Brutal wars. Creative wars. Wars where the underdog found ways to win against impossible odds. Wars where numbers meant nothing if you knew where to strike. Miller stepped closer to the hologram. His crew held their breath. Then, slowly, deliberately, he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the cold, calculating expression of a predator recognizing prey. "Good," Miller said quietly. "I have 1 million targets." For just a moment, confusion flickered across the alien general's face. Then the hologram vanished. On the Velkorn flagship, Thastar replayed the transmission. His analysts were already working, scanning the humans' biometric data. They expected to see fear, desperation, panic. Instead, they found something else entirely. "General," his chief analyst said slowly, "the human's heart rate actually decreased during your threat. His stress hormones dropped. He's not afraid." "Then what is he?" Thastar demanded. The analyst studied the data again, uncertain. "He appears to be anticipating something. Like a predator that has spotted prey." Thastar dismissed the notion. Impossible. The humans were outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. They had to be afraid. On the Indomitable, Miller turned to his communications officer. "Send an encrypted burst to Fleet Command. Priority Alpha. 3 words only, they don't know." Foster stepped up beside him. "Captain, what don't they know?" Miller pulled up a star chart of the New Hebrides system. He began marking positions, running calculations, planning. They don't know what humans do when someone threatens to exterminate us, Lieutenant. They think this is about numbers. They think they've already won. He looked at her directly. They have no idea what's coming. General Thastar stood in his command center surrounded by holographic displays showing the human colonies. His analysts had spent 6 months studying these creatures before the invasion began. The report was clear and simple. Humans were weak. Their technology was primitive. Their largest warship was smaller than a Velkorn scout vessel. Their entire military across 12 star systems numbered fewer than 300 ships. They will surrender within 3 days, his chief analyst predicted. They have no choice. Resistance would be suicide. Thastar nodded in agreement. This would be swift and honorable. The humans would see his MillIon ships, understand they were beaten, and submit. That was how it always happened. 4 to 7 species had made the same choice. The humans would be no different. But something bothered him. He kept replaying that human captain's words. That smile. The way his stress levels had dropped instead of rising. Thastar had seen many species face extinction. They always showed fear. Always. This human had shown something else entirely. Send 200,000 ships to pursue that frigate, Thastar ordered. Capture it intact if possible. I want to understand these creatures better. On the Indomitable, Captain Miller watched the Velkorn fleet split. 200,000 bioships were breaking formation and heading his way. His crew looked terrified. That many ships could turn their frigate into dust in seconds. Sir, they're coming, Foster said. We should jump to faster than light. Get out of here. Not yet, Miller said calmly. He turned to Lieutenant Robert Hayes, his science officer. Tell me you found something useful. Hayes pulled up his research on the main screen. Captain, those aren't machines. They're living organisms. Bioships. They need specific types of radiation to function, like plants need sunlight. I've identified the exact frequencies. Miller's cold smile returned. Can we disrupt those frequencies? Yes, sir. But it will light us up like a beacon. Every Velkorn ship will know exactly where we are. Perfect, Miller said. Do it. Maximum broadcast power. I want them all to see us. Foster stared at him. Sir, that's suicide. No, Lieutenant. That's bait. Miller pulled up a tactical map of the New Hebrides system. See these asteroids? These old mining stations? Those dormant defense satellites we installed 20 years ago and forgot about? We're not running. We're herding. The Indomitable began broadcasting powerful radiation pulses that disrupted the Velkorn bioship's energy systems. Ships at the edge of the pursuing formation started drifting, their systems failing. But it also made the frigate visible to every scanner in the system. Exactly as Miller planned. He piloted the Indomitable deeper into the system, through asteroid fields and debris, always staying just ahead of the Velkorn fleet. Behind them, ancient human defense systems started waking up. Mines that had floated dormant for decades activated. Satellites adjusted their positions. Automated weapons platforms came online. On New Hebrides colony below, 80,000 colonists received an emergency broadcast. Every adult had basic military training, as all colonists did. They'd hoped never to use it. Now they armed themselves and prepared defensive positions. Even the children were moved to underground shelters that doubled as bunkers. Admiral Thomas Blake arrived with the Human Response Fleet 6 hours later. He brought 4 to 7 ships. Against 1 million, it looked like nothing. His flagship, the Valiant, was the largest vessel in the fleet, and it was still just a heavy cruiser. Blake opened a channel to Miller. Captain, I got your message. I assume you've been busy? Yes, sir. Sending you all tactical data now. Miller transmitted everything Hayes had discovered. Admiral, they're not fighters. They're conquerors. They fight the way armies fought 1,000 years ago. Rigid formations. Predictable tactics. Honor-bound combat. Blake reviewed the data and understood immediately. They expect us to line up our ships against theirs. Match them gun for gun. Yes, sir. They've never fought anyone who didn't. Blake felt a dark satisfaction settle over him. The Velkorn had made a fatal mistake. They'd assumed humans would fight like everyone else. All ships, scatter formation. Independent operations. Protocol Serpent is now active. The human fleet broke apart. Each ship headed in a different direction, disappearing into the asteroid belt, behind moons, into debris fields. There was no battle line. No formation. No predictable pattern. Thastar watched his displays in confusion. What are they doing? Where is their defensive position? His tactical officer studied the scans. General, I don't understand. They're spreading out. Moving independently. This violates all principles of fleet combat. For the second time since meeting humans, Thastar felt doubt creep into his mind. He'd conquered 4 to 7 species. He'd fought in hundreds of battles. He'd never seen any military force abandon formation like this. Perhaps they're fleeing in panic, his officer suggested. But Thastar kept hearing that human captain's voice. That certainty. That predatory confidence. He looked at the tactical display showing his 200,000 ships pursuing one small frigate through a maze of asteroids and debris. Suddenly, he realized something terrible. He wasn't hunting the humans. They were hunting him. General Thastar decided to end this quickly. He committed 300,000 bioships to crush what his scanners identified as the main human defensive position. 300,000 against 47 human vessels. The numbers made victory certain. He would overwhelm them with pure force, as he always had. Captain Miller's Indomitable led a small strike team of just 6 frigates toward a massive Velcorn formation. 50,000 bioships filled the space ahead of them. On the bridge, several crew members looked pale. The odds were insane. Lieutenant Foster, how many command ships did you identify? Miller asked calmly. Foster checked her scans. 200, sir. 1 command vessel for every 250 regular ships. Then we have 200 targets. Not 50,000. Miller turned to his weapons officer. You heard the lieutenant. Target command vessels only. Ignore everything else. Fire and move. Don't stop. The 6 human ships accelerated into the Velcorn formation like wolves diving into a flock of sheep. Their railguns fired with precise accuracy. 1 command ship exploded. Then another. Then 3 more. The human ships twisted and turned through the formation, never staying in one place, always moving, always firing at the command vessels. The Velcorn ships tried to respond, but their weapons were designed for large fleet battles, not this kind of chaotic knife fight. The human frigates were too fast, too unpredictable, too close to their own ships. Within 20 minutes, Miller's strike team had destroyed 187 command vessels. The remaining Velcorn ships began drifting aimlessly. Without their neural network coordinators, they couldn't function properly. Some fired randomly. Others collided with each other. Thousands simply floated dead in space. Sir, Foster said in disbelief, we just disabled 50,000 ships. We destroyed less than 200, Miller corrected. But yes, we disabled 50,000. He smiled that cold smile. The Velcorn built a beautiful system. Efficient. Organized. 1 command ship controls hundreds of others. Very smart. Except it gave us a single point of failure to exploit. Across the battle zone, Admiral Blake's fleet employed tactics the Velcorn had never imagined. Small kamikaze drones, each no larger than a car, ignored the regular bioships entirely. They hunted only for vessels carrying Velcorn generals and senior officers. When they found one, they detonated with enough force to cripple the target. The destroyer Relentless, commanded by Lieutenant Daniel Cooper, performed what would become a legendary maneuver. Cooper piloted his ship at maximum speed straight through a packed Velcorn formation. As he flew through, his communications officer broadcast a signal that perfectly mimicked a Velcorn retreat order. 30,000 bioships received the false order and turned around. They fled from their own formation, creating massive confusion. Ships collided. Formations broke apart. Commanders screamed contradicting orders trying to restore control. Cooper's ship emerged from the other side of the formation without firing a single shot. He'd neutralized 30,000 enemy ships using nothing but a clever lie. Human kinetic missiles proved devastating. Each missile carried no explosives. Instead, as it approached a target, it fragmented into thousands of smaller projectiles. Each fragment independently tracked a different ship. 1 missile could disable hundreds of targets. The Velcorn had never faced weapons like this. Their shields were designed to stop large powerful attacks, not swarms of small precise strikes. Lieutenant Hayes on the Indomitable launched a cyber warfare attack that infiltrated the organic neural networks of Velcorn vessels. The bioships started receiving false sensor data. They saw human ships that didn't exist. They saw threats from their own allies. Their own instruments betrayed them. General Thastar watched his tactical displays in growing horror. After 3 days of fighting, he'd lost 400,000 ships. Not all destroyed, but disabled, confused, leaderless, or simply unable to function. His perfect formations had dissolved into chaos. The human fleet had lost 12 vessels. 12 against 400,000. This is impossible, Thastar said. How are they doing this? His second-in-command, Commander Vexhal, shook with rage. They fight without honor. They should meet us in open battle. This is cowardice. No, Thastar said quietly. This is something worse. They're not trying to match us ship for ship. They looked at my MillIon soldiers and saw a puzzle to solve. They identified weaknesses we didn't know we had. He pulled up data on human military history. What he read chilled him. Humans had been fighting each other for their entire existence. They'd developed chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons. They'd fought guerrilla wars, cyber wars, total wars. They'd nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. The Velkhorn had conquered 4 to 7 species, but they'd been fighting the same way for thousands of years. Humans had never stopped evolving their warfare. Desperation drove Thastar to his final decision. He would commit everything. 600,000 ships in a direct assault on New Hebrides colony itself. No more clever tactics. Just overwhelming force. He would crush the human homeworld and prove that numbers still mattered. All vessels, converge on the planet, he ordered. We end this now. Admiral Blake received the alert. 600,000 ships heading for New Hebrides. He nodded slowly. Captain Miller predicted this exactly. The general is frustrated, so he's abandoning strategy for brute force. Blake opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, all stations, all ground installations. Activate Protocol Wildfire. Show them what total warfare really means. As 600,000 Velkhorn bioships approached the planet, every human weapon in the system fired at once. The space around New Hebrides became hell. 600,000 Velkhorn bioships converged on the planet, and every human weapon in the system opened fire simultaneously. Military ships, defense satellites, converted mining equipment, even civilian cargo haulers fitted with makeshift weapons. Everything that could shoot did shoot. The battle raged for 18 straight hours. Explosions lit up the darkness like fireworks. Debris from destroyed ships created deadly clouds that tore through formations. Energy beams crisscrossed space in every direction. The colonists on the planet's surface watched the sky burn. Captain Miller studied his tactical display, searching for one specific target. There. General Thastar's flagship, surrounded by 100,000 elite guard ships. The best of the Velkhorn military, protecting their commander. I can't reach it with weapons, Miller said quietly. Lieutenant Foster looked over at him and felt her stomach drop. She recognized that tone. She'd served with Miller for 6 years. She knew what he was thinking. Sir, no. There has to be another way. Miller smiled at her, and this time it wasn't the cold predator's smile. It was sad and tired. Emma, we both know this is the right move. That flagship dies, the Velkhorn break completely. It's one ship versus ending this war right now. Captain, Admiral Blake ordered us to hold position. Admiral Blake is 3 hours away from optimal firing position. We're here now. The opportunity is now. Miller stood up from his command chair. All hands, abandon ship. That's an order. You have 7 minutes to reach the escape pods. The bridge crew stared at him in shock. Foster stepped close, her voice dropping to a whisper. James, please. Don't do this. Get them off this ship, Commander. That's your job now. Foster's eyes filled with tears, but she straightened her shoulders. All hands, abandon ship. Captain's orders. Move, people, move. The crew scrambled for the escape pods. Within 6 minutes, 22 people had evacuated. Only Miller remained on the bridge, alone with his ship. He sat down at the helm and began plotting his course manually. Maximum acceleration. Straight line to the flagship. He disabled all safety protocols. Miller opened a direct transmission to General Thastar. The alien general's hologram appeared, and Miller could see that his crystalline exoskeleton had dulled. He looked defeated already. General, you came to our space with 1 million soldiers. You thought numbers meant automatic victory. You were wrong about us. Thastar stared at the human. What are you doing? Ending this war. Miller's hands flew over the controls, locking in his course. The Indomitable's engines roared to maximum thrust. You want to know what humans are? We're the species that's been trying to kill ourselves for 10,000 years. We've built weapons to destroy our own planet 100 times over. We've nearly driven ourselves extinct more than once. Then you are monsters, Thastar whispered. Miller shook his head. No, General. We're survivors. And we're really, really good at it. You brought overwhelming force. We brought something stronger. Adaptation. Innovation. And the will to do whatever it takes. He paused, watching his speed climb toward light speed. Tell your people something for me. Tell them humanity doesn't want war. We'd rather have peace. But if someone brings war to us, we'll end it our way. On our terms. Thastar watched the human ship accelerating toward him. In that moment, he finally understood everything. The humans had never been afraid. From the very first contact, they'd been calculating. Every moment, every retreat, every strange tactic had been part of their plan. He'd been outthought from the very beginning. Retreat. Thastar screamed at his fleet. All ships, emergency jump. Retreat now. But it was too late. The Indomitable struck the flagship at 87% of light speed. The collision released more energy than a nuclear weapon. The flagship vaporized instantly. The shockwave expanded outward like a miniature supernova. 50,000 nearby bioships were torn apart. Another 30,000 had their neural networks fried by the electromagnetic pulse. Down on New Hebrides, colonists watched a new star appear in the sky for 3 full seconds. Then it faded. They knew what it meant. Someone had sacrificed everything to protect them. The remaining Velkorn ships panicked. With their supreme commander dead and their elite guard shattered, discipline collapsed. Ships began jumping to faster-than-light travel without coordination. Some collided during the jump and were destroyed. Others fled in random directions. Of the 600,000 bioships that attacked New Hebrides, fewer than 200,000 escaped the system. Admiral Blake stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the enemy retreat. His communications officer looked up. Sir, the Velkorn are transmitting. They're requesting an immediate ceasefire. Blake nodded slowly. He felt no triumph. Only exhaustion. Granted. No pursuit. Let them go. He pulled up the casualty reports. 12 ships lost. 3,847 personnel dead or missing. And one captain who gave everything to end it. Broadcast to all human forces, Blake said. Ceasefire is in effect. The battle is over. The Battle of New Hebrides ended. Humanity's first interstellar war had lasted 4 days. They'd faced 1 million enemies and won. But victory felt hollow as Blake read the names of the dead, knowing each one represented someone who would never go home. 3 months after the Battle of New Hebrides, an unexpected message arrived at Human Space Command. The Velkorn Dominion wanted to talk. Not their military. Not their generals. The Council of Matriarchs, the true rulers of their civilization, requested formal negotiations. Admiral Blake led the human delegation to a neutral station built hastily at the border between their territories. He brought Commander Emma Foster with him, newly promoted after the battle. Ambassador Margaret Walsh headed the diplomatic team. None of them knew what to expect. The matriarchs were nothing like General Thastar. They were ancient, their crystalline exoskeletons dulled to soft amber with age. They moved slowly but with dignity. The eldest, Matriarch Shelby, spoke first. Her voice was quiet but carried weight. Admiral Blake. We have lost 800,000 soldiers. We have lost General Thastar, one of our finest commanders. We have lost something more important than both. We have lost our certainty. She paused, her alien eyes studying him carefully. We need to understand what happened. How did you defeat us? Blake stood before the council. Behind him, he could feel his team's tension. One wrong word could restart the war. With respect, matriarchs, you lost because you expected us to fight like everyone else you've conquered. You brought overwhelming numbers because numbers always worked before. And they did not work against humans, Shelby said. We're different, Blake replied carefully. For our entire history, we've fought each other. We've been at war with ourselves for 10,000 years. We've developed every possible type of warfare because we had to. Not to conquer others, but to survive each other. Commander Foster stepped forward. You saw 1 million soldiers as overwhelming force. We saw 1 million individual problems to solve. 1 million separate targets, each with weaknesses we could exploit. Ambassador Walsh added, your species conquered 47 others. That's impressive. But it also means you've been using the same tactics for a very long time. You had no reason to change. We've never stopped changing because we've never stopped fighting. Matriarch Shelby was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Smaller. We thought we were perfect. We thought we had reached the peak of military achievement. Maybe you did, Blake said. But warfare isn't just about military achievement. Sometimes it's about pure survival. And humans have been surviving against impossible odds for our entire existence. The negotiations took 6 days. The resulting treaty surprised many on both sides. A demilitarized zone was established between human and Velcorn space. Both species would observe each other from a safe distance. Trade would be permitted, but only at designated neutral stations. Military vessels would not cross the border under any circumstances. The Velcorn also agreed to share information about the 4 to 7 species they'd conquered. Humanity wanted to make peaceful contact with those civilizations, to offer friendship instead of domination. Perhaps, Matriarch Shelby said at the treaty signing, humans can teach us something we forgot long ago. That strength is not only about conquest. Blake nodded respectfully. And perhaps you can teach us something we desperately need to learn. How to be strong without constantly fighting each other. 6 months after the treaty, a new station appeared in orbit around New Hebrides. It was called the James Miller Memorial Station, named after the captain who sacrificed himself to end the war. Thousands of colonists gathered to watch the dedication ceremony. Commander Foster gave the speech. She stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd, and spoke clearly. Captain Miller's final words to the enemy have become our motto. He said, when someone brings numbers, we bring innovation. When they bring strength, we bring creativity. When they bring 1,000,000 soldiers, we bring 1,000,000 solutions. After the ceremony, a young ensign approached Admiral Blake. The kid looked fresh from the academy, nervous and eager. Admiral, sir? Do you think the Velcorn will come back someday? Blake looked out the viewing port at the vast darkness beyond. Somewhere out there, countless other species existed. Some peaceful. Some hostile. All unknown. Maybe, son. But if they do, they'll have learned from their mistakes. They'll bring more than just numbers. Which means we'll need to keep learning too. Keep adapting. Keep thinking of new solutions. Isn't that exhausting, sir? Always having to stay ahead? Blake smiled, and it wasn't the cold warrior's smile. It was something warmer. That's what makes us human. We never stop adapting. We never stop learning. We never stop surviving. Yes, it's exhausting. But it's also why we're still here after 10,000 years of trying to destroy ourselves. The ensign nodded slowly, processing this. Blake turned back to the window, watching construction crews rebuild the colony below. New Hebrides was healing. Life continued. Humanity endured. He thought about Captain Miller and all the others who died in those 4 days of war. Their sacrifice brought humanity something precious. Not just survival, but a future. A chance to meet other species as friends instead of enemies. A chance to be better than they'd been to themselves. Whatever came next, from the Velcorn or anyone else, humans would face it the same way they always had. With creativity. With determination. With the absolute refusal to give up. Because survival wasn't just what humans did. It was who they were.